The cold, unforgiving edge of a silver dagger rested against my throat, but the most terrifying thing wasn't the blade, it was the fact that my new husband's mind was screaming at me to plunge it into his heart. The bedroom of the Vance estate was suffocatingly grand, draped in heavy velvet and shadows, but all I could focus on was the man pinning me to the mattress, Kaelen Vance, the Enigma, the monster of the Northern Territories. His physical presence was overwhelming, a towering wall of muscle and predatory grace, his scent an intoxicating, terrifying mix of crushed pine, ozone, and burning wood. His silver eyes were entirely black, the pupils blown wide with the madness that plagued his bloodline. Outwardly, his face was a mask of cruel indifference. His voice, when it came, was a low, gravelly rasp that vibrated through my chest. "Make this easy, little Omega. Submit, and I will make your end quick." But the voice echoing inside my skull was entirely different. It was frantic, broken, and drowning in agony. "Please, Julian, fight me. If you submit, the curse will take me completely, and I will slaughter you. Please pick up the dagger. Kill me before I lose control. I won't let it take you." My breath hitched, my heart slamming against my ribs like a trapped bird. I wasn't just hearing his words, I was hearing his thoughts. The telepathic bond, rumored to be a myth among Omegas, had snapped into place the moment his skin touched mine. I stared up at the man who was supposed to be my executioner, realizing with a jolt of pure shock that he was trying to sacrifice himself to save me. My family had sold me to the Vance estate to clear our debts, fully expecting the Enigma's madness to consume me within a week. They had wept fake tears, but I knew they were just relieved to be rid of a fragile, unranked Omega. But Kaelen wasn't the monster they claimed he was. He was a prisoner in his own mind, fighting a centuries-old curse that demanded he kill his mate. His hand trembled, just a fraction of an inch, the tip of the dagger pressing a tiny bead of blood to my collarbone. "Do it," his mind begged, a desperate sobbing sound in the quiet space of my head. "I love you too much to let you become my victim." The sheer weight of his devotion shattered my paralyzing fear. I didn't reach for the dagger. Instead, I reached up and wrapped my bare hands around his wrists. Kaelen froze, his physical eyes widening in shock, but his mind erupted in a chaotic storm of panic and confusion. "What are you doing? Drop it! Fight me!" he roared in his thoughts, even as his physical grip loosened. "No," I whispered aloud, my voice shaking but resolute. I pushed the dagger away, letting it clatter uselessly onto the hardwood floor. "I'm not fighting you, Kaelen, and I'm not letting you die." The blackness in his eyes receded slightly, revealing the striking, stormy silver beneath. He stared at me as if I had lost my mind, his chest heaving. "You are a fool," he said aloud, his voice tight, trying to maintain the cruel facade. "You have no idea what you've just done." "He's right," his mind whispered, a dark, terrifying shadow creeping at the edges of his consciousness. "The bond is open. The curse can smell you now. Run, Julian, run while I still have a shred of control left." But I didn't run. I pulled him down by the lapels of his tailored suit, pressing my forehead against his. The moment our skin connected fully, a blinding flash of white-hot energy surged through my veins. The curse, sensing my submission, tried to hijack his nervous system. Kaelen let out a guttural, agonizing roar, burying his face in the crook of my neck as black veins pulsed violently beneath the skin of his neck and arms. He was burning up, his body shaking with the effort of holding back the slaughter. But I didn't pull away. I wrapped my arms around his massive frame, holding him tight, and did the only thing my instincts told me to do. I pushed my own calm, my own steady heartbeat, directly into his mind through the newly forged bond. I imagined a quiet, still lake, and I flooded his chaotic, burning consciousness with it. Slowly, agonizingly, the black veins beneath his skin began to recede, his ragged breathing started to even out. The monstrous scent of burning wood faded, replaced by the clean, crisp aroma of rain and pine. He collapsed against me, entirely spent, his heavy head resting on my shoulder. For a long time, the only sound in the room was our synchronized breathing. When he finally lifted his head, his silver eyes were clear, though filled with a profound, heartbreaking vulnerability. He looked at me not as a predator looks at prey, but as a drowning man looks at the shore. "You can hear me," he whispered, his actual voice barely audible. "You're an anchor." I nodded slowly, brushing a damp strand of dark hair from his forehead. "I can hear you, Kaelen, and I'm not going anywhere." The morning sun did nothing to warm the icy atmosphere of the Vance estate. I sat at the head of the sprawling mahogany dining table, my posture rigid, acutely aware of the dozens of eyes tracking my every move. Kaelen sat to my right, a silent, imposing statue in a charcoal suit. He hadn't left my side since the wedding night, though he maintained a careful, respectful distance. His mind, however, was a constant, protective hum against my consciousness. He was scanning the room, analyzing every servant, every family member, calculating threats. Across from us sat Lady Silas, Kaelen's mother, and the matriarch of the Vance pack. She was a ruthless alpha woman with eyes like chipped flint and a smile that never reached them. She had expected me to be dead, or at least broken by now. The fact that I was sitting there calm and unblemished clearly offended her sense of order. "It is a miracle you survived the night, little Omega," Lady Silas purred, swirling the wine in her crystal glass. "My son's madness has claimed 3 mates in the last decade. I assume he merely lost control before he could finish the job." Outwardly, Kaelen's face remained carved from stone. "Julian survived because he knows his place, mother. Do not question my methods." But inside his mind, a lethal, freezing rage was spiking. She's testing him. She wants to see if the bond is genuine. If she pushes him, she'll trigger the curse again. I kept my expression perfectly neutral, but beneath the table, I shifted my foot to gently press against Kaelen's calf. It was a small grounding gesture. Instantly, the violent storm in his mind settled into a focused, sharp alertness. He glanced at me, a flicker of profound gratitude crossing his features before the mask slipped back into place. Lady Silas's eyes narrowed, sensing the shift in the air. "How touching," she mocked, setting her glass down with a sharp clink. "But survival is not submission. The Vance bloodline requires absolute certainty. Today, we will perform the scenting ceremony. If the Omega is truly claimed, his scent will bend to my son's will in the courtyard, in front of the entire pack. If he resists, it proves the bond is flawed, and the elders will demand a new mate." A murmur of agreement rippled through the family members seated around the table. The scenting ceremony was a brutal display of dominance. An alpha or enigma would force their scent into an omega until the omega's natural scent was entirely overwritten, often causing the omega to pass out from the sensory overload. It was designed to humiliate, to break the omega's spirit. Kaelen's hand clenched into a fist on the table, the wood groaning under the pressure. "He is my mate. He does not need to be paraded in the courtyard to prove it," Kaelen said, his voice dropping an octave, vibrating with a dangerous primal warning. "The elders demand it," Lady Silas countered smoothly, her eyes gleaming with malicious triumph. "Unless, of course, you are too weak to control him. Perhaps the madness is already taking your mind, Kaelen. Perhaps you cannot even command your own spouse." The insult hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I felt Kaelen's control slipping. The curse, sensing his anger and his protective instincts, began to whisper in the back of his mind. Show them, dominate him, break him. The black veins started to pulse faintly at the collar of Kaelen's shirt. He was going to lose control. If he lost control in front of the elders, they would lock him in the sub-basement, and they would take me away. I couldn't let that happen. Before Kaelen could stand, I pushed my chair back and stood up. The entire table fell silent. "There will be no ceremony," I said, my voice clear and steady, echoing off the high stone walls. Lady Silas laughed, a cold, sharp sound. "You do not give orders in this house, Omega. Sit down before my son puts you in your place." "He won't," I replied, walking around the table to stand directly beside Kaelen. I could feel the heat radiating off him, his mind a chaotic whirlwind of rage and fear. I reached out and placed my hand flat against his chest, right over his heart. I didn't just offer him calm this time, I opened the floodgates. I pushed every ounce of my trust, my defiance, and my absolute, unwavering belief in him directly into his soul. I am yours, I projected into his mind loud and clear, and you are mine. Let them look, let them see. Kaelen gasped, his eyes flying wide as the pure, unadulterated connection washed over him. The black veins receded instantly. He stood up towering over me and wrapped his arm around my waist, pulling me flush against his side. He didn't just scent me, he claimed me. A wave of his unique, overwhelming scent, pine, ozone, and something deeply, uniquely sweet, exploded into the room. It wasn't the aggressive, suffocating cloud of a forced submission. It was a warm, protective blanket that wrapped around me, and through the bond, I felt my own scent rise to meet it, intertwining perfectly. The sheer power of the mutual claiming hit the room like a physical shockwave. Several lesser pack members actually dropped to their knees, overwhelmed by the Enigma's absolute authority. Lady Silas staggered back, her face pale, her eyes wide with shock. The bond wasn't flawed. It was perfect. It was absolute. Kaelen looked down at his mother, his silver eyes glowing with a terrifying, calm authority. The bond is sealed, mother. If the elders have a problem with it, they can take it up with me. But if anyone in this room ever tries to subject my mate to a ceremony again, I will tear their throat out with my bare hands. He turned and guided me out of the dining room, his mind singing with a fierce, protective pride. You are incredible. His voice echoed in my head, soft and full of awe. You saved me. I leaned into his side, smiling faintly. We save each other, I thought back. But as we walked down the corridor, I felt a dark, lingering shadow at the edge of Kaelen's consciousness. Lady Silas wasn't done, and the curse, though quiet, was still waiting in the dark. The illusion of peace lasted exactly 3 days. On the 4th night, the estate was plunged into chaos. I was woken not by a sound, but by a violent, tearing sensation in my chest. The bond, usually a warm, steady hum, suddenly spiked with blinding, agonizing pain. I bolted upright, gasping for air, clutching my chest. Kaelen's side of the bed was empty, the sheets cold. Kaelen! I projected into the bond, panic rising in my throat. There was no answer, just a static hiss of pure, unadulterated agony. I threw off the covers and ran out of the room. The corridors of the manor were dark, the servants hiding in their quarters. I didn't need to ask where he was. The bond was a physical pull, a compass dragging me toward the deepest, darkest part of the estate, the sub-basement, the madness room. I found the heavy iron doors at the end of a damp stone corridor slightly ajar. The air inside was freezing, smelling of copper and dark magic. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was massive, lined with silver-etched walls designed to contain an Enigma's power. In the center of the room, chained to the floor by heavy iron links, was Kaelen. He was unrecognizable. His skin was pale as ash, the black veins covering his neck, arms, and face, pulsing with a sickening dark light. His eyes were entirely black, devoid of any silver, and his mouth was pulled back in a silent, animalistic snarl. He was thrashing against the chains, the metal groaning and sparking with the sheer force of his strength. Lady Silas stood behind a thick pane of reinforced glass in the observation booth above, watching with a look of clinical satisfaction. She had poisoned his evening tea with wolfsbane extract, a trigger designed to force the curse into overdrive. She was trying to break his mind so he would kill me, or die trying. He is gone, Julian. Lady Silas's voice echoed through the intercom, cold and triumphant. The madness has taken him. When he breaks those chains, he will hunt you down. Run, and I might let you live. Stay, and you will be torn apart. I ignored her. I walked slowly toward the center of the room. Kaelen's head snapped toward me. A low, demonic growl vibrated in his chest, shaking the dust from the ceiling. He lunged, the chains pulling taut with a deafening crack, stopping him just inches from me. I could feel the heat radiating off him, the sheer, violent intent to destroy. But I closed my eyes and reached out with my mind. The inside of his head was a nightmare. It was a raging hurricane of fire, blood, and screaming voices. The curse was a sentient thing, a dark entity wrapped around his soul, whispering that he was a monster, that he deserved to be alone, that he had to kill me to be free. It was overwhelming, enough to shatter any Omega's mind, but I wasn't just any Omega, I was his anchor. I stepped into the psychic storm, letting the mental fire burn around me. I didn't try to fight the curse. You can't fight a shadow with a sword. Instead, I built a light. I gathered every memory I had of him. The way his mind had begged me to kill him on our wedding night to save my life. The way he had stood up to his mother in the dining room. The quiet, reverent way he had touched my hand when he thought I was sleeping. I took all that love, all that profound, desperate devotion, and I pushed it directly into the center of the hurricane. "Kaelen," I called out, my mental voice cutting through the screaming like a silver bell. "Look at me, look at what is real." In the physical world, Kaelen froze. His claws, inches from my face, stopped trembling. In his mind, the hurricane paused. "Julian?" The thought was weak, a tiny spark in the darkness. "It's me," I replied, wrapping my mental arms around his fractured soul. "You are not a monster. You are the man who tried to die to save me. You are mine. Come back to me." The curse roared, trying to crush the spark, but I held firm. I poured every ounce of my strength into the bond, acting as a shield, absorbing the dark energy so he didn't have to. I felt my own nose bleed, my own knees buckle, but I didn't break the connection. "I've got you," I whispered in his mind. "Let go." With a sound like shattering glass, the dark entity in his mind fractured. The black veins on his physical body stopped pulsing and began to dissolve into mist. The demonic blackness receded from his eyes, revealing the brilliant, stormy silver beneath. The chains fell from his wrists, clattering uselessly to the floor. Kaelen collapsed to his knees, gasping for air, his body shaking with exhaustion. I dropped to the floor with him, wrapping my arms around his neck, burying my face in his shoulder. He clung to me just as tightly, his face buried in my hair, his mind a sanctuary of pure, overwhelming relief and love. "You came back for me," he thought, the words trembling with emotion. "I will always come back for you," I promised. We stayed like that for a long moment, the silence of the room broken only by our breathing. Then, Kaelen slowly lifted his head. He looked up at the observation booth. Lady Silas was staring at us, her face drained of all color, her hands gripping the console in sheer terror. Kaelen stood up, pulling me up with him. He didn't yell. He didn't roar. He just walked toward the glass, his silver eyes glowing with a cold, absolute authority that made the very air in the room drop 10 degrees. He placed his hand against the glass. The reinforced pane, designed to withstand an Enigma's physical strength, instantly spiderwebbed with cracks under the sheer concentrated pressure of his focused will. Lady Silas stumbled back as the glass shattered inward, raining down like ice. Kaelen stepped through the frame, his voice quiet, but carrying the weight of a death sentence. "You tried to use my curse to destroy my mate. You failed." He grabbed her by the throat, lifting her off her feet with effortless, terrifying strength. "The Vance pack is mine, the estate is mine, and you are done." He didn't kill her. That would have made him the monster she claimed he was. Instead, he stripped her of her rank, banishing her from the estate and severing her from the pack's protection. It was a fate worse than death for an alpha. By the time we walked out of the sub-basement, the sun was beginning to rise, casting a golden light over the stone walls of the manor. The heavy, suffocating atmosphere of the Vance estate was gone, replaced by a quiet, peaceful calm. Kaelen stopped at the top of the stairs, turning to me. He reached up, gently wiping a dried streak of blood from my cheek. His mind was open, clear, and entirely mine. There were no more secrets, no more curses, no more walls. "I don't know how to be a good husband," his thought whispered, laced with a vulnerable, endearing honesty. "I only know how to fight." I leaned into his touch, smiling up at the man who had been terrified of his own mind, but who had found his courage in my love. "That's okay," I thought back, my heart full. "I'll teach you." He smiled, a real, breathtaking smile that reached his silver eyes, and pulled me in for a kiss that tasted of morning light and forever.